For roughly a month, I was 21 years old. It was February 14th, 1998. I was in university 6 hours away from home. That February morning, I awakened to a dreary Indiana winter sky. To say the least, the physical blackness of both day and night during these winters was trying. It was also Valentine's Day. The darkness merely added to the misery of emotional and spiritual seclusion that slashed through me like a jagged knife for a single and singularly troubled young man. I was studying philosophy at the time. After rejecting Catholicism 2 years before, I spent a lot of time fighting with Christians about the roots of their ideas and lack of logic that was used. I was smitten by logic, drawn in order and necessity. I was living in an apartment with a roommate at the time. We had a really heated argument that evening, and I went to stay with some younger friends of mine who lived in a dorm. They were drinking and listening to music, and I joined them. I struggled with depression for a long time, which was exacerbated by tough romantic situations. I decided to drown out the day's gloom. I was chasing a pal down the top floor corridor. Each floor had two end doors that opened from the center and always in the outward direction. The top floor stairwell featured a cross railing on one side, and the stairs began their descent on the other. When I rushed through the right side entrance to the stairs, I was at full speed. I was confident that I would descend the stairway. I tripped as my body collided with the door, and to my amazement, I was on the wrong side. I tripped and fell into the cross railing as the stairs descended on the left side. My body collided with the railing around my waist, allowing my upper torso to rocket over the railing and down the 10 feet to the concrete stairs below. My body did a complete rotation on the way down before my forehead collided with the edge of one of the stairs with increased centripetal force and speed. When I hit the cross railing, I became detached from reality. This is the starting point for my NDE. There was darkness and coldness, yet there was no suffering. I only knew one thing. I was conscious. What I mean is a strong sense of awareness, but it is more than that. There was no thought engaged in my awareness. I was simply there. There was nothing Cartesian about the encounter. I didn't feel the need to justify my awareness. The blackness was all-encompassing, dense and heavy like a big black robe. My next memory was of being in the intensive care unit of a hospital. I recalled seeing a large crowd gathered around my bed at that moment. I attended a small university, so I had many people who knew and cared about me. My sister was present. There was also the pastor of the university chapel present. A few of my close friends were present. My aunt and uncle were also present. I had chats with them face to face. I saw their sorrow in their expressions, which bothered me because I was not in pain. I recall distinctly attempting to communicate with them, letting them know that I was not in agony and that I felt better than I had ever felt before. The sensation that washed over me at this time was indescribable. All of my stress and mental baggage, as well as the agony and frustration of the physical and human realms, were taken from me. I was utterly and indefinitely liberated. I had the impression that I could move with the speed of light. This was not a three-dimensional, physical feeling of movement. It was as though my thoughts were propelling me rather than my body. There was only pure will. Other significant distinctions in this new reality emerged. I felt as if I had a new perspective on the meaning of human life. I realized that the trivial conflicts between people and resulting grudges are the unpleasant sides of human life that are entirely pointless and senseless. Excessive devotion to the material world is harmful to the spirit. Human life is indeed stunningly wonderful. If people could feel or be aware of this beauty, they would abandon a lifestyle that is harmful to humans, animals, and their local and global habitats. I could feel the great love that encompassed my spirit at that time. A love that came from the people who were close to me. I was wrapped and invigorated by an intensity of human affection. There was light involved in all of this, but it was not light that obeyed classical physics equations. By light, I mean light that comes from individuals but has no distinct source. Remember, I saw these people around me, their expressions, their anguish, and I kept telling them that I was better than I'd ever been. But there was one dagger in my heart. I was convinced that I had never genuinely met a soulmate in my physical form. This was the only void in my identity. This part of me left my human life unfinished. For a long time, I'd been lying to myself about what would actually make me happy in a serious romantic relationship. I lamented not having had the bravery to totally open my soul to another. Things were bad in the waking human world. When my head collided with the edge of the concrete step, I broke many bones in my face, beginning with my top jaw and progressing upward. My sinuses and eye sockets were smashed. My skull had shattered in the area of my brow. I tore the dura layer that shields my brain from bacteria between my skull and my brain. My eye sockets were roughly the size of baseballs, according to my father. 4 quarts of blood had been lost. My visual nerves were compressed and occluded by extreme edema. I was deafeningly deaf, but that was the least of my worries about my human reality. I can't remember why I remember seeing every person's face at my bedside. Neither did I want to take the grief I saw and felt from each of these people, to soak up the suffering like a sponge. To internalize and swallow the pain for those who mourn was difficult for me since I believed I had gained more awareness and was finally free of the physical, which had been the most wonderful experience of my life up to that point. At the same time, it was the most terrifying for those around me. This is one of the universe's most intense contradictions. I recalled seeing the Lear jet that transported me from Valparaiso to Cleveland. I recall being hurried to the Cleveland Clinic after being unloaded at Burke Lakefront Airport. I recall the brilliant lights of the clinic's intensive care unit from when I was there. I recall seeing my parents, who were fairly withered and untidy at the time. This is where I felt like I was in a massive movie theater. The screen was of higher quality than digital resolution. Through this screen, I began to see the human world. I was alone in the theater, but I was at ease. It was comfortable, intriguing, and secure. I remember seeing my mother hand-washing the blood-stained top and jeans I was wearing when I collapsed. I witnessed the truth of the human world in real time, but I also relived the entirety of my existence in an intertwined manner. It felt as if I was aware of every event in my life at the same time. The linear span of my life became concentrated into a single brilliant shining point that could live outside of time. My preconceived notions of time had been destroyed. In fact, the notion no longer made any sense at all, because I felt that everything happened all at once. On the 3rd day of my adventure, I recollect being transported to surgery. I kissed my parents goodbye, certain that I would never see them again. For the first time, I was being wheeled into surgery and placed on the operating table. I began to notice light all around me. There were no figures or forms to be found, just a bright white and warm light. At the time, I accepted the fact that I would be leaving my physical body behind. I had no qualms about leaving my physical body. For example, knowing what was going to happen next piqued my interest. When I let go of my body, I felt encircled by an unlimited sensation of love that was neither qualified or withheld by materialism or restrictions. I felt as if I were in the palm of a giant and protective hand, being lifted far away from the agonizing and debilitating finitude of my earthly body. The next thing I knew, I was at a dinner party in what I assumed to be ancient Greece. There was an older gentleman there, perhaps in his 60s, and I was his guest. The dinner gathering was truly in my honor, I realized. We were in a big hall made of white stone, with large bowls of fruit strewn about. Other guys were present as well, the majority of whom were in their mid-20s to late 30s. We were all clothed in white tunics, with each man wearing a sash that was either deep blue, gold, or purple. There were wine urns where we could all dip our cups and sip the sweet and intoxicating nectar. The men were conversing and joking as they lounged on the dais near a side entrance to the hall. The mood was very upbeat and friendly. When the fruit bowls or the wine ran out, the elder gentleman would summon his servants, who were adolescent guys, to replenish them. Eventually, the attendants brought out trays of roasted lamb, which we all devoured. The party proceeded all night and into the early morning hours, and when the sun came up, I fled the hall through the side door. My NDE had ended at that point. 2 days after the facial reconstruction and frontal brain surgery, I awoke in my hospital room. I was only in the hospital for 2 weeks before leaving. I never took pain medication again after that. Following my final consultation sessions with my brain and plastic surgeons, they informed me that my case had defied the odds. They both told me independently that the isolated injury to my face and the top of my head, as well as the speed with which I recovered, were miracles. They both said they'd never seen someone go through a fall like mine with such localized injuries and heal as soon as I did. According to them, just 1 to 3% of people recover entirely as I did,